So to send email notifications, we have to configure the email notification section. So I am using Gmail's SMTP server details, username and password and everything. So we can verify whether we can send the mail successfully or not. So I was able to send the mail. So yesterday it was the issue with the antivirus software that was running on my machine. So we got the email. So whom to send the email in case of build failure? So this is server details we have configured. So whom to send the email we should configure related to that project. So in the post build actions, in case of build failure, so there is a email notification section. So here you can give the list of recipients who are related to this project, who should receive the mail. So you can save the configuration and you can run the build. So now the build is failed. So you have received the mail, the build failed in Jenkins for the build number 5. So you can go to log, you can look at the reason. So there is a compilation failure. So Java home does not point to the JDK. There is another issue. Rajesh, it was the antivirus was blocking that port on SSL port on my machine. So I disabled the antivirus on my machine. think so it is not recognizing Java home on my machine. So let me configure the Java home property. So here the in configure system section you can configure the Java home. Okay. So now you received the mail saying that some identifier is expected, some compilation error. So this change was caused by because of this fix. So this change was caused. This build is failing. So we can fix this by going to that file. So I have fixed this build failures because our project is configured to PolSCM. So it will automatically identify the changes and it will run the build. And there are other post build actions. So build other projects, we have seen this. You can link the dependencies, dependent projects. So record fingerprints of files to track the usage. So the fingerprinting of the files means, suppose we will be doing the so many builds every day. So it is producing so many artifacts for each build. So people might be using those artifacts. So latter point of time, so if they identified some issue with that artifact, so if they report, so we should be able to track back at which revision of the source code that issue is happening. So to track back from the artifact to the source code revision, so we use this fingerprinting feature. So if you wanted to record the fingerprints on the files, so you can record the fingerprints. So Normally, the fingerprints are recorded on all generated archived artifacts because those are the only things we are going to download. So if you don't want to fingerprint all the archived artifacts, if you wanted to fingerprint the specific artifacts, you can give those artifact details here. So target if you wanted to do the job because that is our artifact, we did not give that information and we can save it. Similarly, we have some other configurations. So discard old builds. So because we are in the build history, the build numbers are keep on increasing. So if you don't want to use those builds, old builds, we can discard the old builds. I just wanted to keep last 7 builds. Keep last 8 builds. So that is 8 days. Okay, I will keep last 8 builds. And I am saving the configuration. Now I will run the build again. So the last build was successful, but it is showing in yellow color. So because some test cases associated with this build are failed. So there are 5 test failures because of some change that we have done during the poll SCM test. So now I will run the build again. So till now we did not fingerprint all the artifacts. So for this build number 9 onwards we enabled the fingerprinting on the artifacts. Now if you see this is the this representation means so this is the artifact that is fingerprinted. Okay. So in the display it is showing like that, but all the old artifacts are not fingerprinted. So the jar that we generated for the build number 9 is fingerprinted. So I can save it. So I have downloaded this artifact and I have used for some time. So later point of time I wanted to know from which build this artifact is produced at what is the revision number. So then I can go to the check file fingerprint. Once you enable the file fingerprints in the post build actions, you can see the check file fingerprint option here. So you can check the file fingerprint and you can choose the file. The downloads. So this is the file that we have downloaded. And I have chosen that jar file and I can check. So this is giving me the information that okay, this is taken from the build number 9 which was produced 1 minute ago. So what is the revision number of the build number 9? It's a revision number 27. So at which the source code was taken and built the jar. So like this you can backtrack from the artifact to the source revision. So that is the use of file fingerprints. So as we enable keep only last 8 builds, the first build was discarded. So let us assume that okay, build number 2 is my release build, so I don't want to lose this build. So in that case I can go to this build and there is an option called keep this build forever. So you can just set keep this build forever so that it will not be discarded. Let us fix this test cases issue. So you can see the build trends, how the build is happening. So there is a trend option here for the last few builds. So there was how much time the build was taken. So the first 2 builds were successful, then there is a failure and there is a unstable builds were there. Similarly, you can see the test reports. So here this is test results trend. There were 0 failures till this build number 3. After that, all failures. So now the test case are fixed and now it is again in blue color. So in your test trend you can see at, at build number 10 there are no failures. So this is how your test trends you can see. So now this is my release build. So I wanted to tag this build revision number so that in future if I wanted to give any fix I will take the source from the tag. So you know right what is branch and what is tag in Subversion. So whenever a release is happened we just tag that release version release revision number in the source code management system. So whenever we need to give fix on that release, we will create a branch from the tag and we will give fix on that. So you can just, there's an option here, you can just tag that build, tag this build, and then give the name. So I am keeping it as is. So the tagging is completed. So you can see in the Subversion the tag was created. So that is demo project 2. So to make it some release 2.0 build, you can just name the build. So because it will be visible to everyone, okay, this is the build that was released for 2.0. So by looking at this, people will immediately know. So this is the release build 2.0. So is that clear? Are you able to follow? Are there any questions till now? Okay. So till now we have seen the project configuration. So we have covered almost all the important option. So we have configured this source code management section and build trigger section to automate the build, and build section to specify how to invoke the build. So there are different options. You can explore on those options. You can directly give Windows batch commands, and the post build actions we have seen. So in the post build actions we have seen archiving artifacts and publishing test reports. So email notifications in case of build failure and recording fingerprints. So these are the important options that we have configured. So in the advanced project options, so these are not very much important. So quiet period means how many number of seconds it has to wait before taking the build at a scheduled time for any check-ins, between check-in to check-in if there are any automated builds happening. So how much time it has to wait, and in case of failure how many times it has to retry. So because of some network issue, if checkout or update fails, so it will retry to make it to verify again. So block build when upstream project is building. If somebody triggers so if there is a dependencies between the project, so while upstream project is building, so do you wanted to run the build of this? So there can be scheduled automated build or there can be manual build. So we can block those builds. So these are kind of simple general usage configurations. So I think we have covered most of the project configuration section. So I hope it is clear for all of you how to configure a project and how to manage the builds in Jenkins. So this is and based build configuration that we have done. So similarly, you can configure Maven style project. So that will be explained by another person after our Maven build session is completed. So all the concept, everything is same. It is just you will get the feel of how to configure a Maven style project. So now we will move back to manage Jenkins section. So we will see what are the other things that we can configure at the system level. So number of executors, how many parallel builds that could happen. So by default it is making it 2, depends on our capacity of the system. You can make the appropriate value here. And the home directory, so directory from which Jenkins will do all its operations. So you can change this directory to a different location by setting the environment variable called Jenkins underscore home. So the retry count and quiet period are just we discussed. And the environment variables, so you can configure some common variables that are common to all projects like company name or some copyright information. So that has to be added to all the files. So those kind of common properties, so you can configure it the environment variables. So these global properties. So these variables can be accessed in all our build scripts. So Jenkins will pass these variable values to your build script when the build is triggered. So you can use these variables in your build script. So you can configure JDK installations. Similarly, you can configure, because Ant is already installed and available in my path, I am able to build. So if it is not available, you can just configure Ant here, and you can give the path of the Ant home directory. So if you are doing Ant based build, you need to configure the Ant. So all these kind of installations are common to all projects. So this kind of configurations we will do in the system configuration. So if you are using Maven project, you need to configure the Maven installation where it is, and if there are any Maven specific options, you can configure here. And the CVS subversion. So what is the subversion workspace version? So you can give this. So like this, you can configure whatever is common to all projects. You can configure here. Some things are available by default. So tool locations you can configure if there is. So here we have defined a tool location called JDK. So you can define, you can pass that location to your build script by using this configurations. So mostly we configure here email notification. So not much of the things, and if needed we can configure these environment variables. So that is about configure system. So configure global security. So till now we are accessing our Jenkins dashboard without any restrictions or without any access control. So it is in the anonymous user. So if you run the build also, it will show you the build is triggered by anonymous user. So but I don't want to give all permissions to everybody to run the build or change the configurations. So then I can configure the security. So you can enable the security. And the access control mechanisms for enabling security. So there are different ways you can give the access controls. So user can be authenticated against LDAP. So this is kind of active directory that is maintained in companies. So all the applications will be authenticated against LDAP so that the users will have the single username and password across different applications. Or you can delegate it to the servlet container. So because if you deploy this where now we are running in a standalone mode. So if you deploy this where in a any application server, you can delegate the application server also. So the user management capabilities. So there you can delegate the responsibility of the access control to the servlet containers. Jenkins itself provides some local database. So you can use Jenkins local database. If you use Jenkins local database, so the users are local to the Jenkins system. So they have to use their own username and password for the Jenkins. So if you integrate with LDAP, so they will be using their already existing domain credentials they can use to authenticate with LDAP Jenkins. So if you are using any other different system for access control, so we need to see any plugin is provided by that somebody provided the plugin to authenticate with that system. So you can install that plugin and you can configure that. So now we will go with Jenkins one user database. We don't have LDAP and application server. So now we are allowing the users to sign up. So this is the access control authentication, and the authorization is, so once I logged in, what can I do? So those kind of configurations we can do here. So for now it is anyone can do anything. So once I enabled the users to sign up, so you can see the user sign up here. So now I logged in with admin account. So if I log in or log out, there is no difference because I did not set any authorizations. I did not create any difference between anonymous user and admin user. Now what I will do is I will go again back to the security configuration. So if I don't want to allow users, so any user can sign up. So whatever be the authorizations that we have given by default to the logged in user, they can get those permissions. If you don't want to allow the users to sign up, you can just remove this option so that you will not see the sign up option here. So the user's creation will be controlled by the admin. So, and I am setting the authorization option to logged in users can do anything. And I will save. So if I don't log in, so I cannot see the manage Jenkins another option. So I can just see the build history. So what are the builds that were happened and all. But I don't see the other options. So project configuration and everything I cannot see. So these are the default read permissions that were given to the anonymous user in case of this authorization. Now I will log in as admin. Now I will be able to see all the options. So because I removed the users to sign up, so I have this manage users option, so which can be used to create new users. So as admin I can create new users, create user. So I will create one more user, user 2. So I have created two users, and so in the security section I will assign the permissions. So because users can log in, so all logged in users will have the same permissions. So there is no difference between the admin user and normal user. So I don't want to give all users to change the configurations of the Jenkins. So I wanted to remove the permissions for the manage Jenkins. So in that case I will use matrix based strategy. So for the admin user we will be having permissions to all. For the user one we will give permissions to overall read permissions. For anonymous user we are not giving any permissions, but for the logged in user with some user one we will be giving overall read permissions. So at project level also I will be giving the read permissions, and I will be saving the configuration. So for anonymous user I did not give any permissions. Now we are using matrix based authorization strategy. So because we did not give any permissions, we cannot see anything without logging in. We will log in as user 1. So for user 1 we have given permissions only to read the content. We did not give any permissions to configure or anything. So these are just read permissions. So these are, now I logged in as admin. So with the matrix based authorization strategy, so all the projects will have the same permissions to the users. Suppose if different users I wanted to give different permissions in the project, so all can read but one person in the team. So if I wanted to make him the configure the project option, so I cannot achieve the two matrix based authorization strategy. So I can use project based matrix authorization strategy. It is similar to matrix based security, but you can override the permissions that was given here at project level. So I will be giving overall read permissions, and at job level I will be giving only read permissions. I am not giving any other permissions. So when I enable project based matrix authorization strategy, so in the project configuration, so we will see this option enable project based security. So here we can override the permissions that were given to this user at global level. So I wanted to give him the permissions to configure and build this project and view the workspace for this project. So now I log out and log in as user 1. So if I go to demo project, so you will see the options configure, build and workspace. We did not give all these permissions at manage Jenkins. We have given these permissions at this project. So we have overridden those permissions. So if I go to base project, so you don't see all those permissions. These are just read permissions, so that were given at global level. But we have overridden the permissions of the demo project because we are using project based authorization strategy. We can set up the permissions at project level, not at global level. So these are different types of security options that are available. So is that clear? How to set up access control and security in Jenkins? So now we'll go back to Jenkins. So reload configuration from disk, this we will not use because suppose if you go to Jenkins home directory, so it has all the files that are related to Jenkins. So Jenkins will do all its operations from this home directory, all configurations, checkouts, builds, everything will happen from this directory. So if you are enough knowledge enough to do modifications to the Jenkins configurations XMLs, so you can do modification here and you can just reload the configuration from the disk without restarting the Jenkins. Now manage plugins. So we have discussed so many times we need to install plugin. So plugin is nothing but a feature that will be installed in Jenkins environment, like we install the required software on our machine. If we wanted to use WhatsApp, we will install WhatsApp on our machine, on our mobile. Similarly, so based on our requirement, we will identify the corresponding plugin and we will install that plugin. So there are so many plugins available, around 1000 plus plugins available for Jenkins under different sections. So if you go to manage plugins, you can see all the installed plugins, what are the plugins that are already installed on our machine. So these are all the default plugins. You cannot uninstall these plugins. So these plugins are given by default by Jenkins, the Subversion plugin or AND plugin or Mailer plugin, the LDAP security plugin. So these are all available by default. So you cannot uninstall these plugins. So I need some plugin. So where can I see that? So I can search in the available plugins. Here you have the list of all available plugins. So based on your need, you can identify the plugin and you can install the plugin. Suppose here it is Twitter plugin. If you wanted to post your build results into the Twitter account, means you can create some Twitter account for your project, and so you can publish all build results to the Twitter account. Whoever is following that account, they can see the results immediately. So you can just install it. You can select that plugin and you can install it. Similarly, if you wanted to use, so in the source code management section we have seen only CVS and Subversion, but there are other source code management systems like JIT, you can use. Suppose if you wanted to use JIT, so you can search for the, okay, what are the JIT plugins available. So what are the JIT plugins available in the available section? Okay, so there are JIT plugins available. So what is the plugin that I should use for source code management? So if you are not clear, so these plugins are divided into sections. In the sections you can see the so build triggers, we have seen 3 build triggers. So there are so many other build triggers available. So you can look at these build triggers. So you can use Git client plugin. So what is the purpose of each plugin? You can see here. So this is the main plugin that we should use to integrate our Jenkins with GitHub projects. So this is the plugin that we should use for configuring the source code management section. So you can select these plugins and you can install those Git plugins. If there are any dependencies between the plugins, it will automatically include those plugins also. Even if we did not select SCM API plugin and all those. So we did not deploy SCM plugin. So but it is needed, that plugin is needed. So it is, so there is no hard deployment is available for this plugin. So it is failed. Means these plugins will work after restart. So you have installed Twitter plugin. So where you can configure that details. So in Jenkins only we have two places where we can configure anything. One is system level configuration, another one is project level configuration. So in the project level configuration, so Twitter means posting the build results. So build results will be available after the post build only. So you can, I think you should be able to go to post build section and you should be able to see the Twitter, yes. So here you can configure this to publish the build results to the Twitter. Similarly, the source code management section of the project. Now you see the JIT has added the source code management, and you can configure the details. So like this, based on our need, we will install the, if you wanted to integrate it, we will install JIT plugin. So there are so many plugins available for different nice to have features or some functionalities. So you can identify based on the requirement and we can install the plugins. Is that clear? So these plugins are not supporting the hard deployment, dynamic deployment, because we asked to install without restart. So we need to restart to make this available. So if some plugin is not available here, so this is like marketplace, Google Marketplace, where we download all the applications related to that. So if something is not available in here, if somebody has given it as a separate file, so you can just upload those files from here. It will be installed automatically. So is that clear? The plugins part. Yeah. So that's it for today. So in the tomorrow session, we will see the master slave configurations. So any questions in the today's section?